Un, un, deux, trois, un, deux, trois, test d'audio. Alright, let's see if we can hear this. Un, deux, trois, un, deux, trois, test d'audio. Okay, cool. We can actually hear that. Alright. So, now we are going to start up the trailer.
Hello everyone, I'm A.G.
Why
Aonuma,
can't I?
producer of the Legend of Zelda series.
Okay. Well, I'm getting audio
There's just 1
duplication.
month left
There
until
we
the
go.
launch of the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. In this vast world that seamlessly connects the surface and sky, you'll be able to enjoy using your imagination to the fullest while exploring. It's not long until you can experience this unfamiliar Hyrule. I'm also very excited to see how you'll explore this world. Today, we've prepared the final trailer before the game's launch. Alright then, let's take a look. Please enjoy.
Hey, Knightley, welcome. It's the final trailer. Or the third trailer, not... I don't know if they've said that it's the final trailer. Lord of the Rings? Oh, dude, look at the time stamp right now. There's like 16 minutes in, it's just started, and it's mostly been me fixing shit. You haven't missed anything.
Zelda, we rely on your knight, and that legendary sword he carries. Our last line of defense will be Link.
Link. I know why I am here. It's something only I can do.
Do not look away. You witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world.
Okay, let's go!
Indubitably do get rocked, you silly Octorok.
You are not alone. Link. You are our final hope. Link. You must find me.
So that's what it looks like, is there's going to be champion combat. Now, I had an interesting thought partway through this, and that's if this is a sequel to Breath of the Wild, we cannot have possibly succeeded while fighting Ganon. But if this is a prequel, then that means we cannot possibly succeed while fighting Ganon. We will always fail in some measure, either last game or this, unless it's either an alternate universe take on it, or it's not meant to be either a sequel or a prequel, but another entry using the same engine. The same way that Majora's Mask was not a sequel nor a prequel to Ocarina of Time. By the way, I just want to watch through that again, but I had thoughts on it that I want to see, like, actually say out loud. So yeah, one of them was that this reminded me of Lord of the Rings because of the right up until it hits the triumphant part. That really reminds me of the Shire theme out of Lord of the Rings, and I'm guessing The Hobbit. Actually, that's a possibility, is that it might actually be Ganondorf and not Ganon. By the way, this is right outside of Hyrule Castle, meaning people have... And given that it's all ruins, this has to take place at least right after Calamity Ganon. Well, after Ganon does this whole big takeover type thing. At least has to happen after that. That's also possible, yeah, is it could be Ganondorf. Now, I have feelings on Ganondorf, but I won't get into them, because there's a reason why I call the character I play in Smash Ganon and not Ganondorf, despite him being Ganondorf. Because he largely took, I've gotten into them now, he largely took all of the, like, big energy. Like, he took all of the energy out of Ganon being Ganon. You know, big beast man with scepter who does magic. Right? Because that's who Ganon was, if you look at 1, 2, and 3. Is he was this big beast man who did magic and fought. He wasn't a beast. He was a human-esque entity who just happened to be a giant blue boar. And Ganon has pretty much since become entirely the big dumb brute, forgetting the fact that he was, at least initially, the wizard Agamemnon. Or was meant to be, I should say. The wizard Agamemnon, and that was one of the things that was thought about him during A Link to the Past, was that he was just straight up Agamemnon in a new form. Now, with all the lore about Malice and Ganondorf, however, Ganon has been reduced to Big Angry Pigman. And Ganon has been reduced to Big Angry Pig. And Ganondorf has gotten all of those cool magic-y abilities. And it's like, kind of took the sails out of him. Well, so yeah, Ganon does manifest different ways depending on who manifests him. However, and this is the however, this game takes place at the end of, or sorry, A Link to the Past. How to phrase this and how to say it correctly. Okay, Breath of the Wild is supposed to take place at the end of the timeline, right? And in the child timeline, Link is successful in killing Ganon, and in the adult timeline, Link is successful at killing Ganon. But during the Fallen Hero timeline, it's the same Ganon, game after game after game, meaning it should actually be the same Ganon in Breath of the Wild, assuming it takes place after that. And by the way, in the Fallen Hero timeline, it's Ganondorf manifesting Ganon, because it's the same Ganon from Ocarina of Time. So from the original Zelda, Zelda 2, A Link to the Past, which is the third, that's all the same Ganon, and it is Ganondorf manifesting as Ganon. At least that's what makes sense to me on a timeline level. So, to me, it seems like if this is Ganondorf, then Big Beast Calamity Ganon should be Big Blue Pig Dude who do magic, as well as being big and stompy. Because that's what Ganon has been whenever he's appeared like this. But at least as far as I can figure. But anyway. Because there are people occupying here, and it's definitely ruins, and it's not the Great Plateau. I don't think it can be the Great Plateau because it doesn't have these sort of structures on it. This is definitely outside of Hyrule Castle, and humans occupying it is kind of neat. Now, oh crap, I missed what I wanted to grab. Not here, not here. Here. So this is right outside Hateno Village, and I think that little spirey thing is right on where the shrine would be, where you teleport in. I could be wrong, but it's right there. And you've got this Ouroboros gate, which is actually really interesting. Now, I'm going to assume that's fallen debris off of the Sky Islands. But anyway. This to me looks like the Gerudo Desert, I'm going to be totally honest. Alright, I had a thought on this. I wanted to try and figure out where that was. If people were standing. Okay, there's too much smoke to get anything representing a definitive guess, but it looks largely like they're facing straight on to Hyrule Castle to me. Yeah, an Ouroboros. So it looks to me like they're facing straight on to Hyrule Castle. And that to me sort of suggests that we might be on the Great Plateau, and it may have resumed human habitation, actually, given just how far away they are from it. So, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it kind of looks like they're on the Great Plateau, given that. That probably does change the landscape, too, but, I don't know. It seems to me like, given how far away we are, then that it's probably going to be the Great Plateau, but well, given that if we just wind back and watch what's going on in steps, because it looks like everything's pulling out of the ground at roughly the same time. Okay, it's going to make that pop up. Yeah, I don't think what's falling around them is debris from the castle. I think it's definitely Sky Islands lifting up and stuff. like meteors, but the people don't seem to be off balance at all. Which I think you would be if the land under you is literally pulling away from the ground, as it would be shaking and you'd be off balance. Now, I have a thought about this, if I can get it to actually load in on the frame that I want. So this is probably one of the first bits of footage of the underground areas. Now, I'm assuming this is the underground area. This could just be parts of Death Mountain, which is totally a possibility. But this looks to me to suggest that if this isn't under Death Mountain, and I'm right and this is a cave area, that they might have biomes, much like the surface did. And some areas are hot. And so you're wearing this as protective armor. But, anyway. Sorry, this just kind of looks like an underground area to me. I don't know why, but that was my thought on it. And then you've got that flying skyship and this bubble and this laser maze. One thing that was actually really interesting to see, not the floating skyship or the bubble, though I have thoughts on them and I'll get back to it. Damn it, I just messed it. So this is the downside of not having an edited video to discuss my thoughts on the game. Okay. So right here, you see villagers actively, or like, Hylians actively fighting back. In previous games, if you could get a Hylian near one of these guys, they would be like... Excuse me, I've just woken up still, so I'm still a little bit tired. But normally if you get moblins to encounter, like these guys, the people would be running around in terror while the goblins just... moblins, there we go, just attacked them. So, seeing them actually fighting back like this, to me suggests that the Hylians are taking a much more active role. And you can see, this is probably, I'm going to say, this is probably Fort Hateno. Which is that big ruin with the lots of guardians in it. I'm just figuring it's Fort Hateno given the portcullis and the walls. Well, yeah, the adventurers would fight, but then they would end up often, like, panicking and running away occasionally before doing it again. This seems like they might have actually configured NPCs to properly fight. Yeah, with trees behind it, the portcullis, the wall, but it looks like it's actually being rebuilt as a new fortress. And that, to me, says that there's probably going to be a lot more NPC-based combat in the game, which I think is good. Now this, to me, doesn't look like any of the enemies that we've seen before. It looks a little bit like a, Listalfos, one of the lizard dudes. But, I don't know, maybe they're their own... Because there looks to be, what are I think, two more of them behind them, and they don't seem to be actively hostile. And it holds on them, so I'm going to guess that that is some sort of new species. Did I just say based combat and not NPC-based combat? Like, combat that NPCs can do. So I'm going to re-grab that thing that I just had up. Here we go, these guys. Yeah, maybe they're the Zonai, actually. What looks to be another one of them is wearing clothing and stuff, so I wouldn't put it out of the question that these are the species that lives underground. And if they are the Zonai, then there might be some really interesting... Okay, so I did actually say NPC-based action. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, these guys might actually be straight up the Zonai, and there might be a lot of interaction with the surface world. With them, as well as getting them up to Sky Islands to take them back over. That would actually be really sort of interesting to explore if they're now living underground. Now, behind them, there looks to be a lot of there looks to be like that malicey stuff that you get around midnight on a blood moon. Those sort of burning embery things that are evil. So I wouldn't wonder if there is some amount of mission where you're dealing with an equivalent to the Yika clan for the Sheikah. Where you are just sort of expected to deal with, like, bad versions and good versions of them. Sort of the same way you have the Yiga and the Sheikah. But given that there's no direct fighting with these guys, I wouldn't be willing to put it past that these guys are your allies and you have to free them from corruption to start off with. That might also be true. Anyway. Now this is kind of interesting. So you've got this big golem-y guy, which is probably another one of those constructs, but this one looks to be like a bipedal golem. Though it seems to be running on the same energy. Yeah, it could also be that going on, too. I'm just speculating, so, you know, your opinion is about as good as mine on this one. Now, this big golem-y construct dude, I don't know why, but, like, it's giving me Stone Talus sort of vibes. Like, I feel like this is going to be the equivalent of a Stone Talus. But it might also be the equivalent of, like, traditional Guardians. Yeah, the background is actually very black. Now, I sort of was thinking about that in terms of being underground and poorly lit. Essentially like Link carrying a torch or a lantern or something, where the light doesn't extend very far and wouldn't light up any back walls to make the room, like, glow. Ah, Implord, welcome. We're just kind of going through the thoughts on the new Tears of the Kingdom trailer, so if you haven't seen that, let me know and I will rewind and let that play out. But we're just going over my thoughts on that. I'm gonna have a drink of water here because I'm pretty dry given I like woke up 5 minutes before I had to do this. I was supposed to be up like half an hour at least before I started doing this. Oh, no, we've already watched it. We're just going through frame by frame, or essentially little clip by little clip. So let me just pull this back for you.
There's just 1 month left until the launch of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. In this vast world that seamlessly connects the surface and
Implord,
sky,
I'm rewinding.
you'll be able to enjoy using your imagination to the fullest while exploring. It's not long until you can experience this unfamiliar Hyrule. I'm also very excited to see how you'll explore this world. Today, we've prepared the final trailer before the game's launch.
Okay, so it is actually the final trailer. Okay, that's cool.
All right then, let's take a look. Please enjoy.
Well, we're going through and we're chatting about it, so rewinding it isn't actually going to cause any trouble for us.
Zelda. We rely on your knight, and that legendary sword he carries. Our last line of defense will be Link.
Link. I know why I am here. It's something only I can do.
Do not look away. You witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world.
Okay, let's go!
But you are not alone.
Link. You are our final hope. Link. You must find me.
So, Knightley, I love that comment. Let me duct tape a fan to Sidon's trident. And, Implored, I am so with you. I want this game, right now. I had a couple more thoughts, actually, while watching through that, actually. So, I'm just gonna come back to here and give you them while I go, though. Chat, feel free to discuss all of your thoughts, though try and keep them roughly in sync with the video? Maybe? Question mark? So yeah, one of the little thoughts I had was that the little Zonai constructs are, so it's playing with the slime, and this one, which seems to be an NPC more like, is doing some woodwork or chopping down a tree, which would go to the theory that they are more like NPCs than enemies. And you can see right here that Link's, I'm going to call it the Zonai hand, because I don't know what else to call it. The Zonai hand seems to be a little bit less controlled by him than the real one, though that does get caught in a shot in the foot when we talk about the paraglider and him running around and whatnot. But anyway, you've got human habitation going on. Like I said last time, that Zonai thing. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by seared with malice, if you mean the hand or what, but yeah, and with the delay, that's not going to be happening. Yeah, that makes sense. So, right here at the, this is, oh, which one is this now? It's not Hateno, because that's got the Ancient Tech Lab. This is, maybe it's a prosthetic after it gets destroyed with the Master Sword. Okay. Link seems to be using it some degree of freely, though. It was something that I noticed when he was, like, diving, is that his real hand seemed to have some amount of move to it, whereas the Zonai one didn't. Maybe that's because it's robotic, though. And so it doesn't sort of have those natural flexes to it. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. But yeah, I think that Zonai pillar-y thing that seems to have replaced the shrines actually properly is a shrine. Just instead of being a Sheikah shrine the same way that we've had them in Breath of the Wild, it's a Zonai shrine. And with that big wheel there, I half wonder if the Zonai shrines themselves are actually stuff that fell out of the sky, or if they did actually emerge from the ground. And I'm calling them Zonai shrines because, again, I'm not sure what to call them, because the game hasn't come out and we don't have a big, spreadsheet of all the... We don't have a wiki, there we go, of what all the things are called. But anyway, that's definitely where the... if this is where I think it is, which should be... Not Hateno, not Akala, forgotten it now again. Some sort of socket. Do you mean the Zonai shrines, or do you mean the big disc in the background? What's it called? Hateno. No, that's got the fortress and the village. It's where you can find Impa. Anyway, I can't seem to think of the name of it. The disc. Oh yeah, it does actually look like some kind of socket. By the way, if you happen to know Zonai structures rise out of the... Yeah. Yeah, so it did look like some Zonai structures did rise from the desert. And by the way, I cannot remember for the life of me which Sheikah village this is. It's not, I know it's not Hateno, so I know it's the other one, because there's like 2 in the game. Like, the landscape tells me it's definitely not Hateno. But anyway. Kakariko, thank you, chat. Yes, Kakariko. Now, here's one interesting thing. On the one side of this, we've got water, and on the other side, we've got muck, or mud, or whatever. I don't know what that brown stuff is called. Like quicksand, or muck, or mud, or something like that. Yeah, well, it's definitely not Kakariko. The terrain definitely places it at Kakariko, though it could be some other village inside of that same terrain mess. Yeah, out in the desert, there seems to be some sort of Zonai structure rising, at roughly the same time that the castle is, in all honesty. Yeah, now, that to me, like this scene right here, where we see Link trying to reach for Zelda, this burned out arm seems like him after his encounter with Ganon. Or an encounter with Ganon. Maybe there will be multiple throughout the game, the way there were in Wind Waker. But this definitely seems like it's not the Zonai arm, because it's got that green glowing energy. Yeah, stuff definitely does rise into the air and fall from the sky. It also looks like, though, stuff is being exhumed from the ground at the same time as well. But this arm looks particularly burned out, which is interesting given previous shots of this scene have shown Link with the green Zonai arm. And so I half wonder if they did that to keep it a secret from us, that Link ends up with a burned out arm, like this. And I'm calling it burned out because I don't know what to call it, but sort of like a maliced arm. Yeah, in fact, there's sort of like burn marks too on it, where it's like glowing, well, not glowing, but it's like red. Sort of the same way that like malice, when it was stretched thinly over something, would leave those red marks too. So it doesn't look, Throw it on the Barbie. Yeah, it looks like a sort of glowing chunk of charcoal, but that's the embers are barely dimly there, and you can see the little flecks of malice, by the way, floating around too. Anyway, let's keep going. And then you see Link running through the desert with these pulling out, and these and then here. You've got these big sinkholes opening up, which may be how we get into the underground areas. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, this ship, I didn't actually touch on it initially, but it seems to be sort of a reference to Wind Waker again. Because it's literally a ship that's sailing on the wind, and I wonder if there are actually NPCs that you can interact with, or if this is a ship that the player can actually capture temporarily. I'm just speculating, but, it seems reasonable. Figurehead looks like Zonai. Yeah, the ship from the Wind Waker, and I've forgotten its name now, has a sort of similar head to it, if I can... Yeah, like, it's got a sort of, like, carved head that sort of resembles the Zonai carvings as well. King of Red Dragons. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so the King of Red Dragons, that head also looks like something the Zonai would make, just more wooden. Or more Viking-inspired, maybe? No, this looks like a Viking longship. The way you've got the oars sticking out and the big sail up top. King of Red Lions, okay. It'd be really funny was if it was, King of Lion Dragons or Lion of Red Dragons, and I just got it completely wrong because it's been, like, the better part of a decade since I've played that game. But anyway, yeah, I think this may be actually a straight up reference to Wind Waker. And it's entirely possible that the sorry about that. I am still pretty tired. Like I said, I kind of got up at like 10 minutes before this was supposed to start. Not because I didn't try to be up earlier. I did, but I ended up being awake in the night for like a couple hours because I woke up to get a drink and then couldn't go back to sleep. Yay! Anyway. So I feel like this is a Wind Waker reference, given you've got a wind ship. Maybe it's just me. You've got these big bubbles, this big laser thing. No, I woke up at about 2 and couldn't get back to sleep until 5. I did not sleep very well at all, so it's not a you thing, chat. It's me. I am literally exhausted right now. But so there seems to be this sort of like Zonai structure that's emitting these bubbles that we can hump into. Laser thing, that's not what we're after. Here we go. So this, to me, outside of the fact that you've got a, I think Japan would call them a gachapon machine. It looks like one of those machines that you put the coin in and you'll do a little cranky, and then one of the little capsules falls out. Yeah, Implored, I know you're joking. I figured you were joking. But given where this is, I have to wonder if... Well, so I don't actually think that this is an actual in-game gachapon machine that, like, you can just sit here and, like, crank out for hours. What I think this is it's... we have to roll for champions? No, so... If this is a gachapon machine at all, I'm going to assume that this is something that probably dumps out weapons. But I was more saying it to be in reference to things. So you've got the big crank wheel, you've got the thing that looks like a gachapon machine, and you've got that big disc, that big hole. That, to me, says that given the scale of things, we're probably in one of the divine beasts. And if I had to pick which one we're probably in, I'm going to say it's either going to be the water one, which is Von Neboris, or we are in... Is Neboris the water one? I think Von Neboris is the water. I think we're either in the water one, or we're in Varuta, which is the airborne one, given what we're seeing is clear and empty sky. Or we might be in some new divine beast that we haven't heard of yet. So, it does, except for Link pushing on this seems to be rotating that. Vonoboris is the desert one, okay. Yeah, like Link pushing on this is rotating it. And then a second later we see him flying through this, which very much looks like Sheikah architecture. Now, this could be one of the mazes, too, and it might not actually be Sheikah architecture, but that's the first thing that this elicits to my mind is Sheikah-style architecture. Or at least what I figure is Sheikah? Ruta is the... Wait, oh, shit, I've been that wrong? Okay. Yeah. Now, this to me looks like it could be one of those ancient puzzly maze things. Or it might be more of the Divine Beast. Or maybe this is the inside of, like, one of the Zonai shrines. And I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but, you know, those are some thoughts on what this may be. Yeah, and then we've got the NPC-based combat, but this to me, like... Sorry. Right here. You're standing on a shrine platform where you'd normally descend, but it's going up. So that tells me that the Sheikah tech is still definitely around. It hasn't gone away between this game and the last one, unless the Sheikah tech repurposed Zonai tech, which they may or may not have, but Zonai tech seems to be very green, whereas Sheikah tech seems to be blue and oranges, sort of like very amber versus like almost like the sort of difference between an incandescent bulb and a blue LED. That seems to be what Sheikah tech uses. Whereas Zonai tech seems to have this sort of magical, ethereal green energy, which I think gives a very different look to it. And then right here you see what, so chat has actually speculated on. Yeah, we have seen technology be taken over. That's entirely fair, especially with the Guardians and having malice in them, which is why they essentially tried to kill people. Now, chat has been speculating, and chat actually proposed the idea that these might be the Zonai. I think it was actually Nately. Nately proposed that these would be the Zonai. Now, I figured these might just be the society that lives underground, and they might be devoid of being Zonai. They might just be some sort of, like, reptile dudes. I can definitely get them being, theoretically, the Zonai, though. So, I can definitely see that. I'm going to just refer to them as the lizard dudes until it's confirmed whether or not they are actually the Zonai, which... given that this is the final trailer, unless there is a final thing that Nintendo does, talking about all of this stuff, I'm gonna have to think that this is probably the last that they're gonna talk about it until it launches. And if that's the case, then when I encounter them is when I will find out if they're the Zonai or not, though. I would be really interested to find out these guys are the Zonai. Now, if they're not, that'll also be interesting, but, you know. They seem to have some stuff which makes me think they may not be the Zonai. But it's nothing that it's concrete. Like that little crest thing on their head looks very, very much to me like the Sheikah eye. So the Sheikah eye is essentially you've got that, and then you've got another one on top of it, and then you've got that teardrop coming down from it, and you've got the actual pupil. That's the sort of Sheikah thing. And then you've got the Yiga one, which is an inverted version of that, and I think it's missing the teardrop. I could be mistaken on what the Sheikah one looks like, because I'm trying to think about it now in my head, and if I just randomly recalled it. No, Employed, that's actually a really interesting take. That you could actually... That would actually be a good way to reintroduce the Triforce, by the way, into the series, because it's functionally been absent along the timeline for, let's see... The Triforce didn't actually plan anything in Breath of the Wild, and I don't think it was... Correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't think it did a huge amount in either of the precursor games to Breath of the Wild, either on the timeline. Though it was definitely a thing in A Link to the Past. I think the Triforce was a bigger thing in the Fallen Hero timeline. Oof. Oh, seriously, I am really sorry about that. Yeah. It was definitely more a thing in the Fallen Hero timeline than it was in the other two, but it might be a good way to pull it back in is to do a thing where, here's the thing. Malice is actually the deity that reincarnates as Ganon. I wouldn't put it past it to be that Hylia is, or that the gods' power themselves is the Triforce of Power. Well, so just because we saw the whole of the Triforce doesn't mean that it was the actual Triforce. Because if you notice, the Hylian crest that's on Link's shield is on the Master Sword and shows up everywhere, also has the Triforce. It's entirely possible that it's either jewelry to look like the Triforce, or it might be cloth meant to look like the Triforce. Maybe I'm completely off base on that, but that's just my speculation. So, who knows? I could be entirely wrong about this. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So, it's actually the proper Triforce on her hand? I'm gonna want a source for that, but this might be an interesting way to... Well, so I've seen it. The question is it actually the Triforce? Or is it something that's just meant to look like the Triforce? Because the Triforce is not a hard shape to imitate. It's 3 triangles. Okay, you've sent me a link to Reddit. I'm gonna quickly hop and check that out. Oh, that glowing. Okay, yeah. Okay, I can see that. So, yeah, it's glowing, doing stuff, so she may actually have all 3 pieces of the Triforce at this point. Yeah, okay. So that was my bad. I'm thinking back to all of the memories where like Link's or not Link's, but Zelda's really flowy robes like come down to her middle finger and there's the Triforce on there. Yeah, that's fair. Now, Zelda didn't initially wield all three pieces of the Triforce. The hero, which is Link, had courage, she had wisdom, and Ganon had power. But anyway, all right. I think it's time to pick this back up. But yeah, I'm not super sold that these are the Zonai themselves, but it's entirely believable to me as well that they are in fact the Zonai. Just because to me they have a little bit of Sheikah energy going on with that little metallic crest on their forehead and that little bump there. That to me looks like they're the precursors to the Sheikah and possibly the society that preceded them and where the Sheikas learned all their technology from. Now, that doesn't rule them out being the Zonai. It's entirely possible that these are in fact the Zonai and the Sheikah learned their magic and tech from the Zonai initially and based their own symbol off of the forehead crest on the Zonai. So you don't think they're underground considering the malice particles? Well, I don't think that actually rules malice out, given that we've seen the castle like pull out of the ground physically, and a bunch of like malice being used to, I'm gonna say push it out. I'd be willing to bet that Ganon has been, or at least Ganondorf anyway, has been underground, um, festering in power. So I wouldn't wonder if we're underground. Now, these could also be Zonai adventurers who have adventured out, and we might not be underground for this scene either. Yeah, this is all speculation. Is there anything in particular, though, because you might have information I don't, that makes you think it can't be underground because of the malice particles? Like, is that something that just cannot happen? Does malice not happen? Yeah, it's also well, so we're assuming that the Zonai is a species. They might be a tribe or something like that. Now, do you mean the Sheikah being the children of the Zonai, or these particular lizard people are the children of the Zonai? Just asking for a bit of clarification there. Because if I remember correctly, even when you're in caves in Breath of the Wild, where you should be underground-ish, I don't know. That's true, but like I don't know. I still think it's malice, but maybe that's just me. Just because you've also got the floating flecks and the floating black flecks, and then you've got the pinks and the reds. Those particularly, but they could be senators from Wind Waker times, to be honest. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that too. Um, yeah. So anyway, I think we've pretty much exhausted this particular frame for speculation. Yeah, yeah. That's like seeing like the pink and the black and the red all made me think, oh, this is Malice. Now, why we're seeing Malice, who the hell knows? But you know, and it being underground is a speculation on my part because it seems to be pretty dark in the background, which if this was on the surface, you would probably see like distant shrubbery or something like that. And if we're underground, then Link might be lighting it with a torch or something else might be lighting it, but we may be too far away to see the back wall of the cave. Yeah. Anyway, I've got more thoughts, so let's move on. Though if you have thoughts, please. The Malice just wants to invite everyone to the world's largest barbecue. Now, I have speculation on this. So, this is definitely a construct, and it's not one that we've seen before, because we've seen the little constructs, and we've seen the sort of gardener constructs, and we've seen the big block constructs, which... Actually, maybe the big block constructs are the equivalent to the stone talus. Maybe this is the equivalent of a guardian. Like a true, proper guardian. Like, the way it sort of emerges there, like... This is the difficult thing about doing it on a PC, is you've got to flick back and forth between things. Yeah, it's a full-blown golem. I'm just wondering what it's the equivalent of, though. And I'm thinking it might be the equivalent thing of a guardian, where there might be these sort of all over the place, but only in specific highly important areas, like how unless you're at Hyrule Castle, your risk of encountering a golem is or a guardian, there we go, is fairly minimal. You'll occasionally encounter a rogue guardian, like out in the middle of nowhere, but they seem to largely be protecting Hyrule Castle. You're much more likely to find the disembodied turrets of them. Did someone say blow golem? Huh. Yeah. So, like, unless you find, like, a rogue guardian off in the middle of nowhere, unless you're at that one particular maze, you don't really encounter guardians very often outside of Hyrule Castle. And, Implord, I'm willing to bet someone is going to mod it so that way these things can fight, and then mod their AIs to target each other rather than Link. And we would actually see these things fight. I'd be willing to bet someone will do that at some point, because, hell, I'd love to see that too. Anyway, yeah, I think this guy is definitely going to be the equivalent to the Guardian, where you're going to see them built up a lot more in areas where the Zonai who built them consider it important, and you might see sort of rogue ones that wandered off with nothing to do in, other places. So. And you see Link in the main room of Hyrule Castle, and I want to just pull this back because I have thoughts on that. And you're going to have to watch through all this again. So, if you remember what this looked like in Breath of the Wild, it's definitely been restored. Because this was serious ruins. Yeah, we don't know till it's out, Implord, actually. So it's entirely possible that in-game you will actually have this as an encounter that can happen. Yeah, we do actually have time rewind, so who knows? So, I don't know. Seeing the main entrance, the sort of foyer, for all you Americans that say foyer for some reason, the foyer of the big entrance to the castle proper. It's not the throne room. Looks to be restored, so it's entirely possible that at some point during the game, maybe very early on, or maybe much later in the game, we'll actually be able to explore a restored version of Hyrule Castle. Because it doesn't look like we can fall through the floor to fight the big Ganon guardian beast that we fought last time. Because that's, for those of you who haven't finished the game, that's how you fight Ganon, is you walk through this floor, right hereabouts. So, seeing it all put back together makes me think that the castle is not going to be as important. But maybe that's just me speculating wrongly. Anyway, so I'm just gonna keep going on this, because that's pretty much the only thought I have.
Zelda, we rely on your knight, and that legendary sword he carries. Our last line of defense will be Link.
Link.
Now, so that scene that's... Yeah, maybe it's a memory. That scene that just played out, though, Zelda's wearing some very ragged equivalent clothing, and the person who's talking to her, it doesn't sound like any of the characters that I... Excuse me. Oh, again, I'm really sorry about yawning so much. So that character doesn't actually, in dress or in voice, remind me of anyone from the main cast of Breath of the Wild. So I'm going to speculate that that might be one of the Zonai people that we just saw. And that may be where Zelda is maybe she's with the Zonai. And that would explain why there's the sort of little orb things that are the construct eyes there as well, is that they are taking care of her. And I don't know, that would make sense to me as an explanation. Is that so? I don't know. These are just my thoughts, sort of off the cuff. Now that whatever that sword is looked silly. Actually, hold on. Hold on. This looks... You know, earlier we speculated about the thing with the wheel and the gotcha machine? This circle looks like that. And it looks to be sort of, Sheikah-esque, too, with those big, lines in it. Given that's sort of what the Sheikah tech looks like. So... I have to wonder... I have to wonder if this is the thing that we saw before that I speculated to be some new form of Guardian. Maybe this is a new sort of puzzle dungeon type thing. Maybe sort of an equivalent to a shrine, maybe? 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 This is just entirely my own speculation, though. But it does kind of look like that. By the way, I want to point out just how good this music cue is, right?
Link.
They integrate that noise perfectly. Now, by the way, this is actually a really cool concept, is that you might be able to make wagons and mount them onto your horse. Because one thing I always thought about is, like, what if I had... Like, horses are really sort of useful, especially early game Breath of the Wild. When you need to get across big flat areas, horses are really good at that. A lot more fun than walking, as much as I've done a lot of walking in my playthrough, because I never think to go get my horse. But supposing you could hook up carts to them, it would actually be really useful, because you could essentially leave that as a weapons dump, where you could go collect weapons, dump them in the cart. Yeah, well, I'm thinking of a way to break it, too. Is, you know, if you can hook up a cart to it, you can have somewhere to store weapons and items that are too much for your inventory at the moment. Now, the difficult thing would be is if you die, is it would probably wipe out the items. Yeah, you can transport your companions that way. Yeah. So I'm sort of wondering if you'll be able to mount like chests and storage solutions to this. Because that would be really interesting if you could like store stuff away. This is why you can't have nice things, you cheeky toaster. Look, look, look. I'm not thinking about breaking it in terms of like game breaking bugs, right? I'm talking about it in terms of I always run into the problem of the inventory being just a wee bit too small. Now, part of that is that I didn't collect all 900. I haven't collected all 999 uh, Korok seeds yet on my um, replay playthrough. But like one thing I really want is some way that I can imagine. So Knightley's imagining a speedrun tech where they glitch the entire population into the final boss room, which supposes that there is in fact a final boss room. But I get what you mean. Now, personally, I'm hopeful that they actually make a storage solution that you can put on this, and then I can put my items in there. That's what I want. I don't want to have to just dump them on the floor and not die. Having to dump them on the floor and then have to worry about not dying is something I don't want to have to do. So I'm... You keep crashing my boat. Stop being so engaging. Okay. Well, we're getting close to the point where we should try and wrap things up, and we've probably only got a couple more bits of things to speculate about. But anyway, I definitely think that this is going to be a really good way to transport people and quite possibly items long distance. And then you've got this thing where we reverse time and kill the Octorok. And then we fly up there. We've got these floating pads. Now, this is also another type of Zonai construct, by the way. I find that rocket blowy up thing kind of funny. Yeah, this seems to be emergency snacks. Well, it's the same thing as transporting the population around. Come on, mate. We know this. This seems to be some sort of other type of Zonai construct. Maybe a slightly higher ranked version of what we saw in the previous trailer. Yeah, Link has a rocket in that clip. Yeah. So this is definitely some sort of Zonai construct that Link is capable of fighting, I think. Actually, given that what happens next is he hits him with the lance that he's got. That's definitely what does happen. But it's definitely not the same type that we saw in the gameplay trailer. It's definitely something slightly different. Maybe it's just an upgraded or more powerful version of them, though. Sort of the equivalent to the silver bokoblins and moblins. Now, one thing that I did notice is here's a stone talus with a bunch of... Yeah, maybe it's an elite version. So you've got this stone talus coming towards Link with bokoblins on it. And you've got this thing waving an arm about, but there seems to be a weapon in its hand, like it's going to be fighting it. This big spinny thing that takes them out. Now, I'm just going to quickly pull back here. Because you got this thing with the arm that's going up and down like it's fighting it, and that's just, it's funny to me. More of the fused arrow attack. this thing. This thing looks to be some sort of new dragon type thing, but as an enemy that you have to fight. And when I say new dragon type thing, I don't mean in the same way that you have the dragons that you shoot at and they drop the scales or claws in Breath of the Wild. And someone's going to say, oh, this is an enemy from this 3D Zelda game that I haven't played. And I'm going to go, oh, okay. You know, right after this. Oh my goodness, it's not right after this, it's right here. Stuckataka. I'm probably saying that wrong. It looks to me actually like it's meant to be Statataka. Oh, sorry. You're saying the Pokemon. I thought you were referring to this big beastie on screen. I thought, oh, someone in chat has just told me what this thing is, and I'll be able to find out what Zelda game it's from. But no, you're talking about the Pokemon. Never mind. Yeah, that's my bad. I haven't played Sun and Moon. Yeah. Uh, well, actually, it's not one of the three dragons, though. It's different. It's got different horns and it's a different color. So it's not one of the three dragons. But anyway, whatever this thing is I know it's going to be a recurring enemy from something. I'll have some serious egg on my face if this is from A Link to the Past, which is my favorite Zelda game, because I know there is a big sandworm type thing. And maybe this is an ice variant of the sandworm. Yeah, it's not actually the same dragon. Now, I was a little bit surprised by that too, but there was a speculation video that came out and essentially went, this is what this is. And I'm like, okay. Now that I know what it is, it's like, okay, yeah. But I made the same immediate connection that it was one of those three from Breath of the Wild, but it's not actually. Yeah, it does look like it's emerging from a portal, but it doesn't look like any of those. It looks like a proper enemy that you have to fight. And if you're referring to the one from the other trailer, I think it's just another dragon. That's the speculation that was landed on in the video, is that it's another dragon, but it does not match the color scheme of the dragons from Breath of the Wild. And it's got very different looking horns. That's one of the things that you can notice about them, is they all have different looking horns. And this has its own distinct look of horns. Now, maybe this is another dragon like those, but this one's outright hostile. You feel cheated and lied to. You're the one who made the assumption. You know, like, come on, mate. Come on, mate. You know? So anyway, this thing is definitely some sort of dragony thing, or maybe a sandworm, but an ice variant of it. I'm not sure what it is. I'm probably going to watch a video that came out like 10 minutes ago once this is all done, once I wrap this up, and it's going to turn out, oh, it's this thing. Well, okay. And oh, look, it's in these three games, and one of them's A Link to the Past, so I should have known what it was, but I don't know. It's been like years since I've gotten to the sandworm in A Link to the Past. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna move on from this sandwormy guy.
I know why I am here. It's something only I can do.
Yeah. Zelda's plot line to me in this, based on the trailer, seems very tied to the Zonai. Yeah, if you look at this thing here, where Ganon's shooting up the beam, by the way, you've got those little malice specks. But to me, I think she is underground with the Zonai. Maybe it's just me, but that's where I would place her personally as far as the story is going. And I'm really hopeful that she'll be taking on a particularly active role in the story. Because previous Zelda adventures have not had Zelda taking the most active of roles, and I'm personally quite hopeful that they're going to give her an active role in the story. Because she is one of Nintendo's 3 big woman characters, and so you got Samus from Metroid, and she is just the main star. She is the protagonist. She does all of the stuff. Yeah, it does look like she was outdoors at parts, but it's entirely possible that that's because she's with a group of Zonai that are adventuring to try and get to Link or something. But so, Nintendo has 3 big woman characters. You've got Samus, who is the main hero of her story. You've got Zelda, and you've got Peach. And Peach has always been a disempowered character with a couple of exceptions. And I think that's really a net negative for Nintendo and a net negative for these sorts of games because it limits what your main characters are capable of doing. Now, in Odyssey, after you complete the main story, Peach sort of goes off on her own and does her own thing aside from Mario, and it's part of your quest to get all of the little stars, or the moons, sorry. But it's its own thing. And I'm really quite hopeful that perhaps, just perhaps, Zelda actually gets to go on some amount of adventure on her own in this one. And she's made an active participant in the story, rather than being either captive, or if she's a participant who isn't captive, she's essentially put off in the corner somewhere to deal quietly with Ganon while Link does all the cool adventuring. I think it would be really neat if Zelda got her own quest that she's taking on at the same time that's part of the main story. You know, that's just my speculation. I think that would be a really neat way to handle it. Now, of course, one thing you'd have to do is make sure that it only sort of progresses as the player progresses, because if Zelda's right at the end of her storyline, and you've basically spent a dozen hours dicking about with shrubberies, and, oh, look what I can do, or completing all of the equivalent to shrines, then, it's going to be a big waste for Zelda, so it's going to need to sort of, I think, be locked. Like, that progression is going to have to be locked to specific events. But if they do it right, from a player perspective, it won't seem that way. Like, if you have them constantly moving about, constantly looking, having side quests for Link to go on, in between all of those things, then, when they up and move on to the next part, it'll just seem like they finished their stuff. Anyway, so Ganon shooting up this big malice beam. Like, that's pretty impressive looking.
Here. It's something only I can do.
This seems like...
Do not look away. You witness a king's revival.
This seems like something that's going to happen
New world.
either literally right at the start or very, very... Hey, look! Hey, princess, I collected 1,000 pieces of Korok dung! Woo! Yeah. So this to me feels like a scene that's either going to play out right at the very, very start of the game, or very early into it. Maybe on your first Blood Moon. Assuming Blood Moons are a thing that still happens.
Okay, let's go!
You've got the Melduga, you've got... Now, I'm going to feel like an idiot if I'm going to quickly take a look at this for a second, but... So you've got that sort of Melduga thing. So you've got your Rito champion, and then... I'm just trying to figure out who that's meant to be.
Okay, let's go!
Birth of his new world.
Okay, who is this? I have no idea who this is. Maybe it's a Zonai Hylian hybrid. Maybe there were Hylians underneath the surface. Yeah, it's a new person. I'm just trying to figure out what it is, like, as an entity. Maybe it's a Zonai crossed with a Hylian. Maybe Hylians were also trapped underground. Maybe it's a Sheikah. Maybe this is the Zonai. Maybe this is actually the Zonai, which would make sense given it's got the same sort of, earrings, which look like what Zelda has on. Yeah, she's wearing the same earrings as Zelda, and they also look like what the Zonai constructs have. So maybe these are the Zonai? Question mark. Seems to be part desert people. Maybe. Actually, you know what else is possible? Is maybe Hylians and... So I think the Sheikah are actually Hylians, just a particular tribe of them. It's entirely possible that the Gerudo and the Hylians... Did Zelda fuse with the Zonai? Yeah. So maybe there are some Hylians and some Gerudo and maybe even some other species underground that have all sort of intermixed to create an underground sort of... Maybe they are all Zonai. Maybe that's possible too. Maybe there are like Gerudo Zonai and Hylian Zonai and Zonai, but they're all Zonai. And that word has stopped having meaning to me. It doesn't sound like a word anymore. Anyway, so you get what I mean, Like, maybe it's some hybrid species, maybe it's some new species we haven't encountered before. Who knows? Who knows? So, yeah, we've got the Gerudo champion.
You are not alone.
And Prince Sidon there. I've forgotten the Gerudo chick's name, so along our quest we're gonna have to... Sorry, what the fuck was that?
But you are not alone.
She's saying there could be Goron Hylian hybrids. Well, Gorons don't reproduce. They sort of exhume more of themselves. They sort of make more of themselves through, like, mining, I think. They don't have sexual reproduction. The Gerudo definitely do, given they go out and hunt for mates, and they have distinct male and female anatomy. But... Or at least they do based on the descriptions they've given of Raiju. Okay, thank you. I feel like I'm up for having forgotten that. Anyway, there's a... That's a Hydra with a malice eye on at least 2 of its foreheads. This is some sort of boss or, like, naturally spawning thing you have to take on. And my speculation is it's a boss. Like, oy, like, oof, that does not feel like something we want to just be running at. Anyway. Yeah, that feels like something that you're going to have to kill. Quite possibly as part of the main quest, actually. But anyway...
You are our final hope.
You're surprised that there aren't Deku NPCs. So, given the Koroks refer to themselves as children of the forest, I wouldn't be hugely surprised if the Deku and the Korok are one species, like in Majora's Mask. So, just because someone refers to the character as their father, that might be a Goron societal thing rather than how they reproduce. I'm just going to quickly look this up because you've got the Great Deku Tree, and then you've got the Koroks, so... Deku... Korok... Because the Korok refer to themselves as children of the forest. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here for a minute, but like, I feel like Goron, 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 I made you out of clay. Goron, 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 it's your birthday today. I don't know. That was the first thing that popped into my head. When you went Goron, 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 I made you out of clay. Goron, 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 it's your birthday today. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's entirely possible that the Deku and the Korok are the same thing, just over a long enough span of time. Sort of the same way that the Rito in Wind Waker were an evolution of the, I want to say Zora? The fish people, what Prince Sidon is. Maybe the pronunciation on Zora is wrong, but it doesn't sound right to me. But I remember that being a thing that was talked about, was that they were a descendant of the Zora, or the fish people. Anyway. So maybe it's possible that the Deku became the Korok. Well, they became the Kokiri, and then they became the Korok. So they seem like seed creatures, but it's entirely possible given outsiders can't see them and they refer to themselves as children of the forest the same way that the Dekus did and do, that they might just straight up be the successor species. It's also entirely possible that the Deku evolved into them, though just because they have these things called Korok seeds doesn't mean that those are actually the seeds that the Koroks grow from. Like, given that Hestu puts them in shakers and shakes them around, it could just be that the Koroks are named after a plant that they resemble. Like, you can find the Korok fronds, right? And it's entirely possible that there are Korok trees, which are the trees in the Lost Woods. I'm calling it the Lost Woods. It might not be called the Lost Woods. I could be entirely wrong on this. But it could convergent evolution like Wiglet and Diglett. I'm actually thinking that the Koroks are named after the plants rather than being some sort of convergent evolution. So they evolved to resemble plants and they lived around these plants, so they were named after the plants. Kind of like how. Let me see if I can think of an example here. In real life, because I know there are examples of this where animals adapt to look like other things. But it's not convergent evolution. I'm trying to think of a good example, though. That's the tough thing. Okay, so you know how there's some butterflies that have, like, eyes on their wings, but not really? And they sort of resemble owls, and that's to sort of spook off predators? Yeah, well, not mimicry. Mimicry is sort of like convergent evolution. I'm thinking that the Deku, like the forest kids, overlay. Because you gotta think about this, right? Like. Yeah, the Deku tree isn't a Korok and it's related to Hestu. And. Like, Hestu doesn't look like any of the other Koroks. Let me just quickly look up the Zelda timeline here on my phone. Zelda timeline? I know it's not one timeline, it's this big split, but just because I want to have a proper look at the length of time. So Breath of the Wild's at the bottom, and let's assume 100 years between each game, right? So if we put 100 years between each game, which seems like a reasonable amount of time to pass between each game, because that's how the timeline works, then at least you have 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So at your very least, you've got 500 years, which isn't a huge amount of time. And on the other hand, you've got like 1200 years on your farthest end. So you've got 1200 years. Now, I'm saying that as a point of speculation, right? But it is entirely possible that over the span of time, the Koroks adapted and or the Deku, uh, like given all of the things that Hyrule went through, like you know the fallen hero timeline versus the child versus the adult timeline, and given that Wind Waker happened and there was that big flood, maybe the Deku became the Kakariko. Was that? Or sorry, the Kokiri. My bad. My bad. Not the Kakariko, the Kokiri. And maybe the Kokiri. And it's pretty clear that the Kokiri became the Koroks. So maybe the Deku became the Kokiri between Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker. That's my speculation. And yeah, Hestu could become the new Deku tree. I wouldn't be too surprised by that. I think that's the end of the trailer. Now, one thing I want to just... Oh, no,
Link,
there's one more thing.
you must find me.
Yeah, I have no idea where that is going to be. I'm going to say it's probably out in the Gerudo Desert, but that's entirely speculation. But by the way, I just want to play a little bit of the trailer here, and specifically some things that make me hopeful about this, because I know I put out that downer video saying that I was worried about it. Your princess is in another castle. But there's something about this that I just want you to close your eyes and just listen to the music. It makes me really hopeful that this game is going to solve my biggest criticism of Breath of the Wild. I'm just going to let this play out from right here. And just close your eyes and just listen, because that's what I'm going to do.
Zelda. We rely on your knight, and that legendary sword he carries. Our last line of defense will be Link.
Link. I know why I am here. It's something only I can do.
Do not look away. You witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world.
Okay, let's go! But you are not alone.
Link. You are our final hope. Link. You must find me.
So, one thing this trailer gives me hope for, and I'm going to expand on this in a longer form video at some point before this comes out. One of my biggest complaints, and this is a big complaint for me about Breath of the Wild, it is, to me, the one black mark the game has. I really hate its soundscape. There will never come a day where I go, I want to listen to some cool Zelda music. I'm going to put on Breath of the Wild's music. Every day of the week, I will go to, every time I want to do that, I'll put on A Link to the Past. I'll put on the original's soundtrack. I'll put on Skyward Swords. I will put on any Zelda game. Except Breath of the Wild. Its soundscape, not its sound design, but its soundscape, is so atmospheric and thin. I find it lacking big and themic, like, things that just define Zelda games. Like, not once going through Hyrule Fields did I ever think this wouldn't be improved if, even just quietly on a piano, you heard just even as an occasional Easter egg. Like, that would have been nice, right? It would have changed the black mark to a gray mark for me. But they just didn't have it. And that, to me, is just such a tragedy. And it's something that I honestly, and I mean this sincerely, hope that they change heading into Tears of the Kingdom, because I want to put on the soundtrack of a Zelda game. Every Zelda game, in my mind, should have a banger soundtrack that is one of those things you always want to go back and listen to when you're in the mood for Zelda music. And Breath of the Wild didn't do that for me, and I really hope Tears of the Kingdom does. I really do, sincerely. Anyway, it's been like the better part of 2 hours, so I think this is as good a place as any to wrap it up. I want to thank you all for watching. Please feel free to hit !social to get links to the Discord, our Twitter, and our YouTube. Additionally, you can hit !tip in chat as well to take you to the tip page where you can feel free to donate money. Currently, our biggest goal is to reach $30 so I can get the DLC for Breath of the Wild as part of our playthrough. Additionally, we are working on getting a Patreon up, though that will be saved for a special thing on the 14th and 15th, the 15th and the 16th, which is Saturday, Sunday, coming up during our big 30-hour run. So, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I hope you'll come back tomorrow, which is Fan Night Friday, and if you are on Twitter, you will be able to vote for what we play on Fan Night Friday, because that poll is going live pretty much as soon as I wrap this up, so please go vote on that. Oh, you don't exist outside of the stream? Well, I'm sorry. I'll see if I can take you with me. But anyway, yeah, Fan Night Friday's poll is going live right after the stream wraps up, and as soon as I basically type up the thing for it. So please go vote on that. And if you're not following me on Twitter, hit exclamation point and type in Twitter, and you will get just the Twitter link. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.